14 years old. Like, what the hell do you know when you're that young?
Imagine being just a teenager with big dreams. You wake up every morning believing your future is wide open. You picture yourself succeeding, making your family proud, and building the life you've always wanted.
Everyone's turned a blind eye in the place where I was supposed to be protected, in my country where I was supposed to be protected.
Then, without warning, someone with enormous wealth, influence, and connections steps into your life. At first, they seem generous. They seem interested in helping you. They promise opportunities that feel impossible to ignore. But behind the smiles and expensive surroundings is a trap carefully designed to take away your trust, your confidence, and eventually your sense of safety.
Definitely trying to get to know me. Trying to find out, where I was from, where I grew up, who I lived with.
For years, that was the reality many survivors say they faced after crossing paths with Jeffrey Epstein. Their stories are different in many ways, but they all share one painful truth. They describe manipulation that began long before anyone understood how large the operation really was. One of those voices belongs to Jennifer Araoz, a woman who spent years carrying memories that she says changed her life forever.
Saying he's helped me, I've struggled. She was similar to me.
As more court records became public and more survivors found the courage to speak, Jennifer's story became one of the most heartbreaking examples of how power can silence vulnerable people for years. Her experience wasn't simply about one wealthy man. It became part of a much bigger conversation about influence, accountability, and why so many victims struggle to come forward. Among those who have spoken publicly about corruption in Hollywood over the years is actor and filmmaker Mel Gibson.
The first time she brought up the name Jeffrey Epstein, how did she describe him to you?
He was just a great guy. He's just saying he's helped me.
While Gibson has often criticized powerful institutions and expressed concerns about abuse in the entertainment industry, he has not publicly verified or confirmed allegations against unrelated individuals.
Very nice, basically saying that, he's heard a lot about me.
Even so, many people have wondered whether hearing survivors like Jennifer would remind anyone inside Hollywood that fame and money should never be allowed to protect wrongdoing.
It was a lot of artwork that had insinuated nudity with women, and I remember
Suggestive?
Very suggestive. We had a bathtub that was kind of opened, and there was prosthetic breasts that he could play with while he was taking a bath.
Jennifer Araoz has explained publicly that she met Jeffrey Epstein when she was a teenager living in New York. Like many young people, she had dreams for her future. She wanted a better life and believed hard work could help her achieve it. According to her account, she was approached by someone who introduced her to Epstein, describing him as a wealthy man willing to help young people.
Just take your underwear off and get on top. And I said I didn't want to.
At first, nothing seemed unusual. That is often what makes stories like this so disturbing. Grooming rarely begins with obvious threats. Instead, survivors frequently describe kindness, compliments, expensive gifts, or promises that slowly build trust before boundaries are crossed. Jennifer has said that this gradual process made it difficult to understand what was really happening until it was far too late. According to court filings and interviews, Jennifer alleged that Epstein sexually abused her when she was a teenager.
He didn't stop,
And did he?
No, he did not stop.
Years later, she became one of many women who publicly accused him of exploiting young girls. Her decision to come forward did not happen overnight. Like countless survivors of abuse, she has spoken about living with fear, shame, and emotional pain for years before finding the strength to tell her story. What makes Jennifer's experience especially powerful is that she has never claimed healing was easy. She has openly discussed struggling with trauma and how painful memories remained with her long after the alleged abuse ended. Her story resonated with many people because it reflected something experts have long understood. Trauma does not simply disappear when the event is over. For many survivors, it follows them into adulthood, affecting relationships, confidence, mental health, and everyday life.
You knew very well my age. You know exactly, who he was hanging out with.
Then, everything changed in 2019. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on federal sex trafficking charges involving underage girls. Overnight, the case that had lingered in public discussion for years returned to headlines around the world. Suddenly, people began asking questions that had never fully been answered. How had one man accumulated so much influence? Why had so many warning signs apparently gone unnoticed for so long? And perhaps the biggest question of all, how many victims had remained silent because they believed nobody would ever believe them? For Jennifer, the renewed investigation meant her story was no longer being told in isolation. More survivors stepped forward, sharing experiences that echoed similar patterns of manipulation and abuse.
A lot of people involved. It took doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, dentists. All these people knew what was going on, hairstylists. I mean, the list goes.
Although every person's account was unique, together they painted a picture prosecutors argued reflected a long-running pattern of exploitation. But here's the twist. When survivors finally began speaking publicly, many people expected the hardest part to be over. Instead, they discovered that telling the truth could bring another set of challenges. Public attention, media interviews, online criticism, painful memories, and endless questions became part of everyday life. Speaking out required enormous courage because it meant reliving experiences many had spent years trying to forget.
Ellen DeGeneres and wife Portia de Rossi have moved to rural England, put their Montecito estate on the market, and plan to never return to the United States.
Jennifer continued sharing her story despite those challenges. For many observers, her willingness to speak represented something larger than one criminal case. It became a reminder that powerful people can create environments where victims feel trapped for years, and that justice often moves much slower than the damage caused by abuse. As more documents emerged through lawsuits and court proceedings, public interest only grew. Reporters examined records, investigators reviewed evidence, and the world tried to understand how Epstein had managed to operate for so long, despite years of allegations.
I think with Jeffrey Epstein, it starts somewhere, but then it ends with either you having sex with him whether you like it or not. He has somebody new in his life. He likes to see them a lot. So I went there a whole bunch of times and, it led to, unfortunately.
The deeper people looked, the more complicated the story became. And that was only the beginning. The deeper investigators looked, the more disturbing the picture became. Prosecutors alleged that Epstein had spent years building a system that allowed him to target vulnerable young women and girls while surrounding himself with wealth, influence, and powerful connections. His homes, his private jet, and his luxurious lifestyle became symbols of a world that many people believed was beyond accountability. For survivors like Jennifer Araoz, watching the headlines unfold brought mixed emotions. On one hand, the world was finally paying attention. On the other, every new article, every television interview, and every court hearing forced painful memories back into the spotlight. It wasn't just news to them, it was their lives. Jennifer later filed a lawsuit under New York's Child Victims Act, a law that temporarily expanded opportunities for survivors of childhood sexual abuse to pursue civil claims that otherwise might have been barred by time limits. She alleged that Epstein had sexually assaulted her when she was a teenager and argued that the trauma had affected her life for years afterward. Her lawsuit became one of many that reflected how significant legal reforms were allowing survivors to seek accountability decades after the alleged abuse occurred. Then came another moment that stunned the world. In July 2019, federal authorities arrested Jeffrey Epstein on sex trafficking charges involving underage girls. News cameras surrounded the courthouse as reporters tried to understand how one of the most infamous criminal investigations in recent memory had returned after years of controversy. Many survivors believed this was finally the moment they had waited for. They expected evidence to be presented in court. They expected testimony. Most of all, they expected the justice system to publicly examine the allegations that had followed Epstein for years. But that trial never happened. In August 2019, Epstein died in a Manhattan jail while awaiting trial. Authorities ruled his death a suicide. His death immediately sparked widespread public speculation and countless unanswered questions, but it also meant that survivors would never see him stand trial on the federal charges. For many victims, that was devastating. Imagine carrying painful memories for years, finally finding the courage to speak publicly, believing that the person you accuse will answer questions in court, only to learn that opportunity is gone forever. Nothing about that feels like closure. Jennifer has spoken publicly about how difficult that reality was. Like many survivors, she emphasized that Epstein's death did not erase the harm that victims said they endured. If anything, it reinforced how important it was for their own voices to be heard. As more women came forward, the public began noticing similarities in many of their accounts. While every survivor described unique circumstances, prosecutors alleged that Epstein repeatedly used methods designed to gain trust before exploiting vulnerable young women. Those allegations became a major focus of both criminal investigations and civil litigation. Eventually, attention turned toward the people who had allegedly helped him. One of the most significant developments came with the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell. Federal prosecutors alleged that Maxwell helped recruit and groom underage girls for Epstein over several years. She denied the allegations, but in 2021, a jury convicted her on multiple federal charges related to sex trafficking and conspiracy. Her conviction represented one of the few criminal cases directly connected to Epstein's network. For many survivors, Maxwell's conviction offered at least some sense that accountability was still possible, even after Epstein's death.
But even then, many questions remained. How had this gone on for so many years? Why had early warnings failed to stop it? Could more have been done to protect vulnerable teenagers before additional lives were affected? Those questions continue to be debated by journalists, lawmakers, and the public today. Jennifer's decision to speak publicly became part of that larger conversation. She wasn't simply recounting painful memories. She was helping illustrate why survivors often remain silent for years. Fear, shame, confusion, and concern about not being believed are experiences that experts say are common among victims of sexual abuse. Her willingness to tell her story encouraged many others to reconsider long-held assumptions about trauma. People began to understand that delayed reporting does not necessarily mean allegations are untrue. In many cases, survivors need years before they feel emotionally safe enough to describe what happened. That realization changed how many people viewed abuse cases across the country. Meanwhile, the Epstein investigation continued generating headlines through document releases, lawsuits, and ongoing litigation involving various individuals and institutions. Some records fueled public debate, while others required careful interpretation, because appearing in legal documents or contact records does not by itself establish wrongdoing. That distinction became increasingly important.
In high-profile cases, rumors spread much faster than verified facts. Investigators, journalists, and courts each played different roles, and not every claim circulating online is supported by evidence. For survivors seeking justice, separating documented facts from speculation became essential to preserving the credibility of their experiences. Jennifer has remained one of the voices reminding the public that the focus should remain on those who say they were harmed. Beyond headlines and courtroom developments are real people trying to rebuild lives shaped by trauma. Her story is ultimately about resilience. It is about someone who says she endured unimaginable experiences as a teenager, yet refused to allow silence to define the rest of her life. And while no legal outcome can erase the past, speaking publicly gave many survivors something they had been denied for years: the chance to be heard. Still, the emotional journey was far from over. Because surviving abuse is one challenge, learning how to live after it can be an entirely different battle. For many people watching from the outside, the Epstein case became another major news story. It dominated television, filled newspaper headlines, and sparked endless discussions online. But for Jennifer Araoz and other survivors, it was never just another headline. It was a deeply personal chapter of their lives that they carried with them every single day. Trauma doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. It doesn't disappear after a court hearing or a news cycle. Survivors often spend years rebuilding their lives, learning to trust again, and finding the strength to speak about experiences they once believed they would have to carry alone forever. Jennifer's decision to tell her story publicly required enormous courage. She has spoken about the lasting impact she says the abuse had on her mental health, relationships, and sense of security. Like many survivors, she faced the difficult reality that sharing her experience meant reopening painful memories, while also inviting public attention and scrutiny.
Despite those challenges, her voice became part of a much larger movement. Across the world, survivors of abuse have continued coming forward, encouraging conversations about accountability, institutional failures, and the importance of believing people who report abuse while allowing investigations to follow the evidence. The Epstein case also changed how many people think about power and influence. It raised difficult questions about how someone with extraordinary wealth and connections could avoid accountability for so long. It prompted renewed discussions about the responsibility of institutions, the role of law enforcement, and the importance of protecting vulnerable young people. Although Jeffrey Epstein died before standing trial on the federal charges filed against him, the legal process did not end there. Civil lawsuits, court proceedings involving others, and the continued release of records have kept public attention focused on the broader issues raised by the case. Those proceedings have also reinforced an important principle: allegations should be evaluated through evidence, due process, and the courts, rather than through rumors or speculation. Jennifer's story reminds us that behind every case file and every headline is a human being. Survivors are not defined only by what happened to them. They are also defined by their determination to reclaim their voices, rebuild their lives, and help ensure that others are not harmed in the same way. Whether someone follows every development in this case or is only learning about it now, one lesson remains clear: listening to survivors, supporting fair investigations, and demanding accountability where the evidence supports it are all essential to building a safer society. As more information continues to emerge through official court proceedings and credible reporting, it is important to distinguish documented facts from online speculation. Doing so protects both the integrity of investigations and the voices of those who have come forward.
Jennifer Araoz's decision to speak publicly has become part of that larger story. Her account has contributed to a broader public conversation about abuse, trauma, and justice, one that extends far beyond a single individual or a single criminal case. Perhaps the most powerful takeaway is this: silence can protect wrongdoing, but speaking up can inspire change. Every survivor who chooses to share their experience makes it a little harder for abuse to remain hidden and a little easier for others to seek help. The Epstein case will continue to be studied for years because of the questions it raised about accountability, power, and the treatment of survivors. While many questions remain, the experiences shared by those who came forward have already had a lasting impact on public awareness and legal reform. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative and want more fact-based deep dives into major cases, investigations, and stories that have shaped public conversation, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. Feel free to share your thoughts respectfully in the comments, and remember to keep the discussion focused on verified information and empathy for those affected. Until next time, thank you for watching, stay informed, and take care.